Hello and welcome to the Hibs Observer Transfer Deadline Day briefing with myself, Liam Bryce, joined by Patrick McPartlin. In typical deadline day fashion, things have only really got going in the evening, already starting to pick up pace as we head towards the closing of the window. So we'll dispense with the small talk on this one, shall we, Patrick? And just get straight into it because everyone just wants to hear what's happening. So Hibs still very much in the hunt for Luke McCowan. What can you tell us about that?
Well, I mean, I think we've known for some time he's obviously a player who, the club's hierarchy like. They see him as being key to the midfield and, being able, I suppose, crucially to improve the quality of the midfield at the moment. I think you saw, just against Hibs last weekend, what he can do in the centre of the park. And as we know, like Hibs have been putting in a number of bids. There was some debate over whether this third bid had been tabled, whether it had been sort of knocked back, whether it had been officially rejected, whether it just hadn't been, the email hadn't been replied to, whatever you want to call it. But essentially, it has been knocked back. Hibs have gone in with a fourth improved bid this afternoon in the hopes of getting their man. No sort of word on what that fee would have looked like. I've seen some Twitter accounts sort of implying that or almost sort of suggesting that I put a figure on it, which certainly didn't. But I mean, I think we can safely say that it's going to be sort of north of the 750,000 for the third bid that they put in, which gives you some sort of understanding of how keen Hibs are to get their man, and that they are willing to to spend big to get the players that they want to bring in. Obviously, reported interest from Celtic, but as we know on deadline days, a lot of things can happen very quickly. The unexpected can happen, and I think it's one of those things. It's not going to be resolved anytime soon. Still a few hours left until the window slams shut, which by law I think we have to say.
Yeah.
So I still think I still think plenty more to come on that one. So I think worth keeping an eye out for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and you've kind of touched on it there, the kind of looming issue in this saga, if you like. It's another word that we're contractually obliged to use. Is of course is Celtic's interest. Obviously, we don't know exactly what's going to happen with that, but with Celtic's kind of financial might, if you like, it could, if they decide to really firm up their interest, then it could become challenging for Hibs. But I think from a Hibs perspective, is it kind of fair to say that they have gone all out to try and land Luke McCowan?
I think so, yeah. And I mean, it's very possible that we've not seen the end of the saga just yet, if you like. Depending on what happens. But I think if there's anything that you can't sort of accuse the club of, it's not sort of trying their hardest to get someone who they see as being key to moving the club forward. And yeah, I mean, I think you look at what Hibs have done recently in terms of paying out transfer fees, even if it's not really worked out, sort of paying money for Dylan Vente. They paid significant sum to bring Kieran Bowie into the club. Also paid a significant sum to get Ellie Yuan into the club after his loan spell. So I think Hibs, and I imagine this is the Gordons are sort of like backing the club when it becomes apparent that there is a player they really want to bring in. And I think I think it's an indication of how much Hibs want to bring Luke McCowan to the club, that this is a player who's got a year left on his contract at Dens Park, and the price is sort of heading north all the time.
Yeah.
And I mean, Hibs have been sort of really, I suppose, kind of consistent in their sort of messaging, if you like, that they're not going to just say like we're going to put in one bid and then that's it. They are sort of like they're trying their hardest to get him. I don't think they're going to be held to ransom. I don't think they're going to pay over the odds, if you like. I think everyone has like a kind of ceiling, but Hibs will know what Hibs will know what he's worth to them, what he might be able to bring to the team, how that might affect the how the club performs in the League and Cup this season. So I think I don't think it's a case of Hibs just sort of going in once or twice and then thinking, oh well, that's it. Obviously very keen to get a deal done, and just as we say, a few hours left, and there could be a lot of movement yet.
Yeah, because we've seen a bit of movement with Jair Tavares going out to Motherwell. We'll touch on that, but obviously the thing that everybody wants to know, it's any potential incomings. I think they just kind of understand is that it's still being worked on all the way to the end of the window.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of. I think I said this on Twitter earlier, or X, whatever we're calling it these days. But a lot of spinning plates, because it's not just the case that there's sort of like here's one player and Luke McCowan who Hibs want to sign, and that's it. All the energy's been diverted towards that. There are a lot of things going on. There's conversations happening. David Gray was speaking at his press conference yesterday about answering his phone and things like that. So I think safe to assume that there's a lot of work going on to to bring in new players. Potentially we could still see more outgoings. Obviously, as you mentioned, Jair has gone to Motherwell on loan, which we'll come to in a minute. But Alain Del Ferrier, I think, is another one who looks likely to be heading out on loan. And again, it really just depends on what happens with other clubs. I think again, something Gray said at his press conference was that there might be Hibs players who are targets for other clubs who only become targets quite late on in the window, and then it becomes a case of can something be done with time running out, and does it work for Hibs, does it work for the player, does it work for the other club? So there are a lot of moving parts, and we probably say this every transfer deadline day, and it's probably quite frustrating to hear, but I think I would think, if fans would maybe getting a bit antsy and saying, "Oh, we haven't heard any, any rumours, we haven't heard any names linked." Nicky Cadden came out of the blue, and there's been a couple of other signings, and there's not been a lot of chat about it. So I think Hibs obviously trying to keep certain signings as quiet as possible. So I don't think a lack of kind of serious rumours is really anything to get too worried about.
Yeah, as you say, work ongoing to get players in before that 11 p.m. deadline. And as we said, we're just going to touch on Jair Tavares heading out to Motherwell. I think he was Gray over the past couple of weeks. There was a kind of glut of outgoings kind of at the start of the window, but David Gray was kind of saying that he was expecting more to go in that direction as well. And I suppose Jair was always, I think, he'd fallen into being one of the sort of prime candidates to perhaps make a move away. He's still contracted to Hibs until 2026, but I think when you see the likes of Kieran Bowie coming in, Junior Hoylett, Nicky Cadden, it just kind of looked more and more apparent that his game time was going to be limited. And at kind of 23 years old, he's a guy who's going to want to play. I mean, he was frozen out not so long ago, came back into the fold under Nick Montgomery, played. Was in the first team for a reasonable amount of time before maybe falling out of it again when Mizzy and Melida came to the club. So, I mean, it's not an unexpected one to see Jair go out on loan, isn't it? And it's a chance for him to go and show what he can do, still at Premiership level as well.
Yeah, I think that's maybe the big test is sending him to a Premiership club where you'll be playing against Premiership opposition, probably or definitely more regular than he would be if he was staying at Hibs. And I think when you look at how Motherwell played last season, they played some nice football. Stuart Kettlewell's obviously, worked quite well with them since coming in. And I think it's probably a little bit of, they'll have seen how he kind of transformed Theo Bayer's career. And, I think they'll hope that perhaps he can have a sort of similar effect on Jair and just maybe, get him a bit of confidence back, get him a bit of, get him regular football at, top level rather than just playing sort of, second string games or, getting sort of 5 minutes off the bench here and there. I mean, sometimes like a change of scenery can sometimes make like, all the difference for players. And I just think, it's a bit of a fresh start for him, because I think there is that, there maybe is a little bit of that sort of hanging over him at Hibs, that, there is almost this perception that, he's not good enough, and because he was brought into a big fanfare and given the number 10 shirt, and then, as you say, frozen out. And I think, there's been interest from clubs before who've been keen to take him on loan, and he's kind of turned that down, or it's not come to fruition for whatever reason. But I think maybe it's good for him to get away and just sort of like escape a bit of the noise, maybe a bit of the pressure, like the expectation as well, because I mean, you speak to some of the new signings at Hibs, you speak to the coaching staff, they say the same thing, that there are a lot of big expectations at Hibs in terms of how they perform in the league, how the players perform, and that can be difficult to adjust to when you're a young player, when it's you haven't really played a lot of senior football, you're adapting to a new country, and when you've had you've had the experiences he's had, and he spoke about them last season, but it was very difficult for him when he was essentially kind of I don't know what the word is, maybe sort of ostracized almost, and he's sort of training with the under 18s like that. That can really sort of hammer a player's confidence and self belief. And I think somewhere like Motherwell, he'll be getting regular chances, and so from his point of view, he's playing regularly, and ideally gets his confidence back, and Hibs can sort of see how he copes. Playing for a team where there maybe isn't the same sort of pressures, but he's still playing against the same level of opposition, sort of week in, week out. So I think an interesting one to keep an eye on and see how he goes. Because I don't think there's any question that he is a talented player. It's just it's not really worked for him consistently in Scotland yet. And I suppose this loan spell will really be a chance for him to show that he can adapt to the game, that he can play sort of week in, week out, and have an impact, make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm hoping for further movement before the 11 p.m. deadline, but we're going to call it for there just now, folks. We've got more to be getting on with this evening. Thanks for joining us. We'll hopefully have more to bring you throughout the night. Do keep an eye on our social channels, and to get full access to all our content, do consider subscribing to the Hibs Observer. £4 for 4 months is our current offer, and also subscribe to our YouTube channel, where we'll be bringing you kind of post-window reaction, and then building into the Sunday's clash against Kilmarnock, which has almost been forgotten about in all the transfer hustle and bustle, but there is that to look forward to as well. Thanks for joining us, folks. As I said, we do hope to bring you more throughout the evening, but take care, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Cheers.